a current CREWNY New York director, past president. Click yes, past president and chair of our new member engagement and empowerment committee, which is presenting today's event along with CREWNY New York's Legacy Leaders Committee, led by Maria Elefante, its chair, and Kenny Shepard, its vice chair. On behalf of these committees and CREWNY New York, we are delighted to see you all here today for our very first Distinguished Leaders Roundtable, featuring a very impressive array of CREWNY New York members who are also commercial real estate market leaders in their respective fields. If you have not already done so, please rename yourself with at least your first and last name so we know who you are. Please also turn your video on if at all possible, because it's so much nicer and more personal when we can see each other. We have such an amazing panel today that is certain to be content rich. So our program will be focused almost entirely on our speakers and their discussion. But before getting down to the business, we need to quickly recognize and give a big thank you to CREWNY New York's 2021 sponsors for their longstanding loyalty and generous support of CREWNY New York, particularly during challenging times. At the platinum level, we have Fidelity National Title Group. At gold, we have Kimco Realty and TREP. At the silver level, we have Ackerman, Anshin, CBRE, Cushman & Wakefield, Jack Resnick and Sons, JB&B, Langen, Marcus and Millichap, and Zetlin and DiChiara. Bronze, Hennigan Construction, Calico, and Silverstein Properties. And finally, at the Friends level, we have Meridian Capital Group and WB Wood. Now, if you have any questions for the speakers, I suggest you put it in chat as we go. And we will do our best to get to all of them during the Q&A segment following the discussion. And I encourage you to use private chat for any personal reconnecting, using the main chat room primarily for those questions, just to be sure I don't miss any, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of good ones. And now I am pleased to introduce the facilitator of today's discussion among our distinguished leaders. Introducing Elizabeth Schwero, partner, Seyfarth & Shaw, serving as national co-chair of its real estate litigation group. Elizabeth has been recognized as a best lawyer for real estate litigation in the New York area and is a very valued member of both of your host committees. Please be aware that the views expressed by our panelists today are their personal views and do not represent the opinions of their respective companies. So Elizabeth, take it away.
Good afternoon. Thank you. We have a terrific panel and I will introduce them briefly. First, we have Christine Chippernoy, Executive Vice President, Real Estate Construction, Hospitality and Nonprofits at USI Insurance Services and past CREWNY New York President. We have Anne Marie DiCola, CEO, TREP LLC and past CREWNY New York Director and longstanding sponsor. We have Linda Foggy, Managing Director, Global Head of Real Estate Operations at Citibank, and Jennifer Stewart, Managing Director, Global Head of Real Estate, Bank of New York Mellon, who is also a past CREWNY New York Director. So the first question I will ask everyone, and we'll start with Christine, is to briefly describe your current role and responsibilities in your position, in your case at USI Insurance Services.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for having me today. I lead a national practice primarily focused on real estate, construction, and hospitality, and we partner with customers in these verticals to help them contain their overall cost of risk between contractual risk transfer, claims management, loss control, and finally, and lastly, insurance procurement. Insurance to many makes their eyes glaze over, and they really don't want to deal with insurance, but it's becoming a larger and larger line item for every single customer, and done incorrectly could have devastating effects for the entire organization. So that's what I do on a daily basis. My role is developing new business, maintaining business, and ongoing relationships as a problem solver for our client base. I have the third largest book of business within the USI family, and growing daily because expertise is desperately needed in this industry. With CREW, I was the 2015 president of the New York chapter and just rolled off the CREW Global Network Board. And it's been the best part of my life is CREW.
That's terrific.
Thank you. Anne Marie, can you please describe your current role and responsibilities at TREP?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. I serve as CEO of TREP, and TREP is a company that tracks the commercial real estate finance market, and now we are also tracking the corporate credit markets. As a result, we have data and analytics solutions for our clients who represent the entire range of participants in the commercial real estate finance industry and also the CLO industry. We provide a lot of data that tracks performance in the US and abroad. I oversee a wonderful group of TREP employees in our offices in New York City, San Francisco, and London, and also in other remote locations, both here and abroad. We're actually back in our offices. So very great to speak to all of you today.
Linda, can you please describe your role and responsibilities at Citi?
Sure, I'll do my best because I'm brand new to Citi. I haven't even actually started, but I will be soon. I am in transition between two fantastic roles and opportunities. So I'll describe what I am doing. For Citibank, I've just joined the team there, and I'll be global head of real estate operations for Citibank, for Citi Realty Services. And that entails the oversight of all of the design and construction efforts, the facilities management groups, data centers, critical facilities, sustainability, and workplace globally for the bank and all of their holdings and operations, occupied real estate, really. And like I mentioned, I'm brand new to that role, so I'm still learning about the team and understanding who's there and just getting into it. I'm technically on a little garden leave between things. I'm transitioning away from Turner & Townsend, which is an international consultancy firm. And there I have been the executive vice president, head of the East USA, and also America's head of corporate occupier. And in that role, there are certain skills, which maybe we'll talk about in the panel today, that I feel will transfer quite nicely from one role to the next. A lot of what I do is about people, leading teams of professionals who are really good at what they do, also interacting and engaging with the market and clients and understanding what occupiers are needing and expecting in real estate, which I think will all transition over nicely to Citibank. And so that is, and in that role at Turner & Townsend, I also look after all of our offices and businesses across the eastern part of the USA. And so that's the two roles that I'm sort of transitioning between right now.
Sounds great, thanks. And Jennifer, can you please describe your current role and responsibilities at BNY Mellon?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon to you all. And Linda, congratulations on your new role. Terrific, good for you. So my name is Jennifer Stewart. I am the global head of real estate at BNY Mellon, where I am responsible for managing an 11 million square foot portfolio of owned and leased facilities across the globe, lead the development and execution of portfolio strategies and real estate transactions that best align business and corporate priorities while improving performance, enhancing value, and increasing efficiency. Those groups that I'm responsible for are the strategy and transaction team, the facilities management team, the data centers, sustainability, and partnering close with our design and construction colleagues. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about career questions. Anne-Marie, we'll start with you. Tell us how you got started in commercial real estate and what led you to get involved in commercial real estate.
It's interesting, when I was in law school, during summers, I worked as a summer associate, and the law firms for which I worked rotated you through a few different departments. I loved the real estate department. That was the most enjoyable experience for me. And what I liked about it clearly was how tangible it was, how productive and constructive the projects were. You really saw a beginning, middle, and an end. I loved the challenge of solving and reaching solutions and getting to a great transaction that was what everyone was agreeable to. And I just loved it. I loved working in it, especially in New York. And it forever captivated me.
Thank you. Jennifer, what motivated a significant career choice you made, and how did that work out?
Well, I'll tell you, there's two different that I'd like to reference, Elizabeth. And when I think about the first, the motivation behind my first career change, I'm Heritage Bear Stearns. So I worked there in the early part of my career. And then upon the merger with JP Morgan Chase, during the financial downturn, an exogenous factor, if you will, right? Outside, not my decision to change roles, et cetera, but rather something that happened upon me, right? And so what I thought was so important that, to be able to adapt, be nimble, be able to adjust, have flexibility. And so it was really between Bear Stearns and then JP Morgan. And then of recent, I just changed roles during the pandemic. I changed roles in June of 2020, where I left JP Morgan and joined BNY Mellon. And that was actually my own decision. And so for me, it was kind of a first. And I had worked with someone previously over at JP Morgan who I thought the world of, and she's currently the CAO over at BNY Mellon. And, she approached me and said, would you come over here and be our global head of real estate? And, I took pause and thought about that because I wasn't necessarily in the market or looking, but was thrilled to be offered the opportunity and actually made that decision where, it wasn't an exogenous factor, if you will, or something that was thrust upon me where I needed to be able to, adapt or be flexible, et cetera. But then I gave my notice, right, and had garden leave during a pandemic. So I gave notice on March 12th, 2020, and everyone started working from home remotely on March 13th, 2020. And spent my garden leave, Linda, literally in the garden of my backyard, did not go anywhere. And then joined BNY Mellon June of 2020. So the exogenous factor there was a pandemic where you need to adapt, be flexible, nimble, and adjust. So, decisions sometimes can be put upon you, and then you can also make some of your own decisions, but you still need to be able to, be flexible and be able to adapt. So when you asked that question, Elizabeth, it was very quickly, I just thought, let us all just realize the situation that we're in and, be able to be flexible is just paramount.
Resilient, yes. Christine, can you please tell us who has inspired you in your career and why? If you can limit it to one.
I will limit it to one. So my career has been long, 40 years, and I've done a lot of different things from being a receptionist through executive leadership and now into a role where I run a national practice and I'm responsible to eat what I kill. And when I came to Wells Fargo, which is the predecessor of USI, I was hired by a gentleman who I was going to work for, who I really, really liked. And my old job, I gave 6 weeks notice because I was in the middle of a huge project and there was no one there who could really take it on. So I just wanted to finish it and then move on. And Wells Fargo was willing to wait. And my prior employer was very thankful. And by the time I moved from one job to the other, my boss had changed. And it went from this gentleman that I had been chasing me for about 2 years to come there to somebody I didn't know. And it was a woman and she was kind of older. And back then my experience had been working for women wasn't great because they weren't really that nice to you and they weren't really that interested in moving you up. So I was like, this could be really good or this could be really bad. And it ended up being one of the best changes that I ever made. She was a senior executive of a firm that we acquired and she's retired now and still my mentor. And she really helped me see things very differently. I was heading toward, I was in senior leadership and I was heading towards, senior executive level position. And I just realized by working with her and by her identifying what really drove me and helping work through that with me, that my role really shouldn't have been in executive leadership. I really wasn't interested in finance and HR, which is what it became. I was a deal junkie. I just love helping clients. I love being in the deal. I love learning every day and having new experiences. And she really pushed me into a different direction, which is where I am today, to being a practice leader and running a large portfolio of insurance. This is what drives me. And I love getting up every day and doing what I do. And I think I would have been very, very unhappy following the path that I was following just because I thought I was chasing the dollar, and really ended up the twist and turn that I took ended up being way more beneficial financially. And I'm very, very happy with what I do versus where I was going. And I did it with a woman, which was great.
That's great. That's great. Is there something about the gender issue with prior mentors or prior leaders that you could identify?
So I think,
as having
and
been a problem?
it may not be universal, but I think some of the women that were more seasoned, is that a nice way to put it? Kind of thought I had to do what I had to do to get here and no one brought me up and weren't as willing to help. But then it really is person specific. I've met a lot of wonderful women that really just want to put you under their wing and kind of give you the tricks of how to get up. And I've made it a very big part of what I do every day, both at CREW and with different insurance industries that I work with, as well as my own team, to make sure that those women are given opportunities and are being coached and brought up and being sponsored to be put in positions that they may not be bold enough to ask for, but they're certainly entitled and qualified to do.
Great, thank you. Linda, can you please tell us about a career accomplishment you're proud of? Only one of your many.
Yes, many have heard, maybe some have heard this story before. I'll just stick to one. I'm really proud of this accomplishment, not because of the statistics and the numbers that I'll quote here in a second, but because of the impact that it has had on a larger community and of people. And so when I was working for Wells Fargo and had the great pleasure to build 30 Hudson Yards Tower, and we were investing a great deal of money, but I looked at it as an opportunity to really impact the community around us that we were investing this money and building this building in. And so we took on a challenge around how much supplier diversity we could achieve in the project. And we thought about initially, we'd go beyond our normal 20% goal and try to achieve something audacious, like 35% of the dollars spent with small and diverse businesses. And so at the beginning of the project, I really took this to heart. And the leaders at Wells Fargo asked me to do this because they thought and knew I had a passion around it and thought that maybe I could get it done. And we sat down and put together a strategy and a roadmap and really sought to understand the suppliers in the market and the community. It was more work than if we would have just gone about things in our normal way. But I was really proud that we ended up spending over 50% of all of those dollars with small and diverse businesses in New York. It was magnificent and outstanding, not again because of the percentages, but because I could see that it had a real impact on these businesses, these firms, these companies that could now put this iconic project into their resumes. It begot additional business for them and stature in the community, but also because of the individual people that they were able to hire into their companies and train up and give great experience to. And what that has done for them is they've gone on in their career to other companies and firms and things. And so I'm particularly proud of it because of the impact that it had on so many people in the New York market.
That's great. Thank you. So the next is a question that I will ask each of you to answer, and we'll start with Jennifer. What are some of your skills that have been central to your success?
Well, I have to tell you, Elizabeth, I think just being flexible and the resiliency and being able to adapt, a new role, leading a team where, you have a book of business and you're looking to build. Remember, my team, I know them virtually. I've been in the office since June of 2020, but to get to know people, through a square, right? And to engender the idea of camaraderie and people that are, across the globe and in different locations and different time zones. I think that that's been a real testament to the wherewithal and the resiliency and the drive to be able to, have the team come together and feel like it's a cohesive group. And so, I've had to kind of take a step back as well, not only get to learn new people and get them to know me too, but then also really to listen and to listen twice as hard, just because you can't get up and walk down the hall and say, when I saw you do that kind of emotion, in the meeting, I just wanted to follow up with you, right? I can't get up and walk down the hall because if I do, then I'm in my kitchen and there's nobody there. So just the idea of being able to, draw on your skill set of, what else is in my toolbox that I can draw upon to try to connect with others, and drive towards our goals that we want to accomplish. So, I'm still working at it, as I know that we all are, in this virtual world, but, I think it'll be even more interesting as we, endeavor into a hybrid world where, we will be back in the office. Some folks will, some will be, remote or virtual, just as, on these global teams, there have always been folks that were virtual. So, it's shuffling the deck, bringing it all together and making sure that everyone feels, heard as a part of the team and that we're all striving towards, a common goal and working together and helping each other. So resiliency.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Anne Marie, what are some of your skills that have been central to your success?
Well, I certainly echo what Jennifer said. Resiliency, being a good listener, reading people, very, very important. And a corollary of resiliency is adaptability. In my case, my own experience with adaptability came some years after I graduated law school. As I mentioned, I fell in love with real estate at NYU Law, and then I went into private practice here in the city, loved real estate, and my life plan was to be a partner in a law firm. And that plan was completely dashed in the last recession or two ago, in late 89, 90, when we had a particularly bad recession here in the US that really affected real estate. And the law firm that I was with was not going to survive this recession. And there I was suddenly faced with the fact that everything I had dreamt of doing, becoming a law firm partner in that firm, which I loved, was not going to happen. And I started looking for a new job in an absolutely abysmal job market for a real estate attorney. And a couple of things I did. I actually applied for roles in firms that were trying to add associates to their bankruptcy teams, because I had done extremely well in bankruptcy law in law school and had worked on some bankruptcies where, of course, real estate was a major asset. And I got a few job offers from those firms. But I also spoke to somebody that I had brought to the firm as a client, because I had to let the founder know that the firm was looking to be acquired and we were looking to take their business with us. And that firm was a firm called TREP. And it was this interesting company that was doing financial analysis of some securities that were relatively new at the time, called mortgage-backed securities, and in this case, commercial mortgage-backed securities. And although I was sitting there with job offers from law firms that wanted me to join bankruptcy teams, where I knew I would know the culture and I knew that I would succeed well, I decided to take this other job as in-house counsel with this unique kind of firm, because what I learned, and to the theme of resiliency and adaptability that Jennifer started here, I learned that actually when you stare down the thing that scared you, you may find that the new opportunities that it shows are really exciting. And I went in-house at TREP, absolutely loved being on the inside of a business that was also tracking the commercial real estate market, which I loved. And 15 years in as general counsel in a small but growing company, there was an opportunity to put my hat in the ring for CEO. And because I knew so much about how TREP worked, I decided to try it. And when I learned that they were giving me the role, one of the reasons they said was the fact that they liked the fact that I was so adaptable and flexible, that I could creatively solve problems, as evidenced by what I had done with my career. And I have to tell you, every day as CEO, being resilient, being adaptable is something you need every single day. So I think that that's a really important skill for anyone in business.
Thank you. Christine, how would you answer that question? What are the skills that have made you successful in your career?
I would pretty much mirror what Anne Marie and Jennifer also said. I would say in addition to that, problem solving and continued learning. I mean, continued learning, the world is changing in such dramatic ways, especially for the insurance industry, as new technologies emerge, as global warming is changing our environments. It's become really important to not just do what you've always done and to really kind of stay ahead of the curve by learning and looking at things differently and coming up with solutions that could help your clients and help your firm. I would say that.
Thank you. And Linda, what are the skills that have made you so successful in your career?
Sure. I think I'm going to say two skills. One is diplomacy skills, believe it or not. And the second I'm going to say is people skills. Because so someone asked a question in the chat about how your leadership skills had evolved over the years. And this goes to the point of people skills, which, people who've known me or worked with me in my career know that I consider myself a student of people. I study people. I try to understand people. I really try to get to know what their drivers and motivations are on an individual level. And this allows me to really hone my leadership skills. My natural leadership style is not one of authority or hierarchy or title. It's just one of influence and persuasion. Try to get buy-in from people. In order to do that, you really, really have to understand people's drivers and motivations. And it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And so for me, it hasn't been the golden rule of treat people how you want to be treated. It's, for me, treat people how they need to be treated. And this is kind of allows me to get the best out of everybody in the team. And that's really how I assemble a good team and sort of really produce these very, very high outcomes from the team. People sometimes are able to do things that they didn't even know that they can do when they started working with you. So I think people skills is paramount in terms of how that looks in terms of evolving across the leadership style. It's a very good question because when you start out in your career, this kind of depends on where you are. You might start out in terms of dealing with people, thinking about your technical skills and kind of what you need to learn how to do to be technically sound at your job. And so in order to do that, especially as a woman in our field, you might feel the need to show strength and show power. And you do really in your career, but then you get to a place in your career where your title is so big that it eludes strength and power and you need to show vulnerability. And so you evolve your style so that people can feel connected with you and they can kind of get the work done. So I would say for me, one of the most important things is good diplomacy and good people skills.
Thank you. So Jennifer, have you ever been afraid on your job?
Sure, every day. There's a quote. There's a quote. If you're not afraid, if you don't do something every day that puts a little jump in your step, then you're in your comfort zone. So all kidding aside, for sure. You give notice on March 12th, and the next day the world shuts down. You go, ooh, okay, all right, well. My decision was solid before. My decision is solid still. I had a lot of people ask me, like, really, you would do that? And I was like, yeah. I also, took the role over at JP Morgan when Bear Stearns, folded. And so I tell my friends, if I'm not making major decisions in time of crisis and it's too comfortable, please pinch me and tell me to rethink. So, you got to do things that take courage, trust yourself, trust your gut, know your business, right? Make sure you're not jumping in the deep end without, the skill set. But, you can always, lean on yourself. You can always take a step back. You can always ask questions. You can always go back to what was comfortable. You never do. And you just gotta go forward. So, are there times when, you have a question? Sure. Are there times when, you get little goosebumps? Sure. But know that others are in similar situations. We're all human. And, you gotta take opportunities when they're presented. So the answer to that, Elizabeth, is yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth, I
Anne-Marie, how about
completely
you?
agree. And one of my favorite expressions is everything that can make you happy is on the other side of fear.
That's a great expression.
It's one of my
Remember that one.
favorites. And I think about that every day because like Jennifer and everyone else, yes, I've been afraid at work all the time.
I thought it was just when I go to court and have a trial. Christine, how about you?
Probably the most scary day was when I came off payroll and went on to a fully commissioned basis. And that was really just because everybody else had confidence in me except for me, and they all saw what I didn't see. And I really never looked back, and it was the best thing ever. But it's a scary leap as a woman and a sole provider for a family. But more women should, if more women took that step, I think we control more business and be in a better spot.
Linda, how about you?
Yeah, for sure. I always say to people, well, if it's not scary, then it's not a big enough leap. And I might as well not waste my time with it. So usually a lot of the fear is when you're in a transition, when you're moving from one position or role to another. I mean, early in my career, I remember I always wanted to be promoted into my boss or his boss's job. And then the day that he announced that he was leaving and they told me I was promoted, I was like, oh, really? Like, oh man. And I thought, like, from that day forward, I thought it's really important. They, like to Christine's point, they see something in me. It's really important for me to just believe in myself, like trust the process and just jump in and do it. And like the other said, I haven't looked back, but the transitions are particularly hard because in my career, I've always been growing and moving about in the companies that I'm in or doing something amazing, and something else comes along. And it's a scary thought to leave what you know how to do and go to something totally new. And there's no way to know if it's going to work out. And usually if it's growth, you don't know how to do the entirety of the job. There's pieces that you need to learn. So when I probably the scariest thing was leaving Wells Fargo to go to Turner and Townsend, because I was very happy there and doing amazing work, and moving on to something, a bigger role there. And I was shifting to an entirely different side of the real estate spectrum, from what they call client side to service provider side. And on top of all of that, nearly no one in the industry thought that it was a good decision for me. No mentors, no one. They're like, what are you doing? But I was like, I need to do this. I knew that for me, I'm driven by purpose, and my purpose is like, from what seat can I have the biggest impact? And in that role, you know, sitting on the board of directors of Turner and Townsend, and having access to a really broad array of the real estate sector, I knew that I could impact more people. And I knew, looking out 10 years away from my career at that time, there's certain skills that I knew I needed to have that I didn't have and I could get from that role. And so even though it was super scary, I was like, I just let the fear be there. I let it exist. I acknowledged it. And I knew that I had to make the decision based on something other than the fear. And I did. And I always say that to women. You know, you look at these other women and think, like, they're so fearless, like they must have no fear, but they do. We do. The point is that you move past it and make the decision based on something else. So that's what I would say about being afraid on the job.
So what impact, if any, do you think your gender has had on your career? And I'm going to start with you, Linda.
Sure.
Do you think gender has played a role in your career path?
Yes, it's gender in my view from this career is a double-edged sword here. I think the very same thing that makes us great leaders as women and have a particular edge is our, you know, part of it being our ability to access our emotions and empathy in an easier way than the other gender can. It helps us. It also means that we have to manage it. We have to manage it, you know, in a fierce way. And make sure that we're in control of it, and that we're making decisions in a very logical fashion. And so in some ways, being a woman makes it challenging, because sometimes you need to prove yourself a little bit more, or at least you feel that way. Who knows if it's real or not, but it's perceived in your mind, and no matter what, you do it. And on the other hand, it allows you the ability to lead in a certain way that's very human, and sort of in touch with people. And it's not that men can't do that too. It's just that it comes maybe for some women a little bit more natural to us, just because of sort of our physiological. So I would say, yes, it's had an impact in some ways, a little bit to overcome. But in some ways, it allows you to kind of lead in a certain way and move ahead, would be my answer.
Thank you. Jennifer, how would you answer that question? How gender has impacted your career, if at all?
I think who you are and who you bring to the table, regardless of gender, right? Regardless of orientation or what your pronouns are, who you bring to the table is your own unique self. And I think that that's what's so important for building out a team. Everybody has strengths, right? And to be able to understand, you know, who's the one that's got the foot on the accelerator in a certain instance, and who's the person that's, you know, doing some of the behind the scenes work, right? And then when you think about a different situation, maybe it's the reverse. So I think that, bringing your unique self to the table and to, the office and to the workplace is incredibly important for everyone to be able to not only strive and learn, but also to impact change as well.
Anne Marie, has gender impacted your path and your career, do you think?
I have to agree with Jennifer in that I actually found that as my career progressed, I really didn't focus on my gender or anyone else's as much as I focused on being communicative, making sure I was doing something that I love to do, because I find that when you do what you love, you do it extraordinarily well. And I actually have thought very little about my gender in my profession and much more about where do I make a difference. And I look for the same, that same attitude in the people around me.
Christine, has gender impacted your role in your career?
I think definitely when I was in a management role, it did impact my role because I was always the only woman at the table and talked over a lot and other things. And I think back in the day, it was harder, and it's getting easier and better now, especially when there's more than one woman at the table. So you could say, oh, wait a minute, she's got a great point. Let's hear that again. But in the role that I'm in now, my role is really a relationship-based position, and everything I do is about relationships with clients and problem solving and things of that nature. And I think women do that better than men. I think something that we all really juggle with is the imposter syndrome, where we I forget who said it, is like, I don't know all the skills of that job, so I shouldn't take it. And as women, I think we suffer with that just a little bit. Men don't. They're like, I could do 2 things on the list, I'm going for that job. And I think, women want to do 80 or 90% or 100% before they go for that job. And I think women as a whole suffer from that just a little bit more. And if we just put our foot out and said, you know what, I could do this, I could do half and I'll learn the rest on the job, or I'll get a sponsor to help me. I think
That's a male attitude.
Yeah, that's a big differential in the way we think. And maybe some women don't think like that, but most women I know are like, oh, I don't know, but they can do it in the end. And like we said before, different people see different things in you. If they didn't think you could do it, they would never throw your name in the ring for a particular job. So you can do it, so you just need to rise up.
So thank you. So we're now going to move to some questions about leadership. And since we're running behind schedule, if everyone could answer very briefly, I would like to get through a bunch of questions because everybody is giving such great answers. We could talk all afternoon. So what does it mean to you to be a good leader? Linda, we'll start with you.
To me, to experience a good leader means that when you leave my team, which eventually you will grow and evolve into something else, you're better than you were when you came to my team. Hopefully you've learned some skill or trait that you will be able to carry on and use in your career that will make you better.
Okay, Jennifer.
I would say lead by example. And if you see something on your team and you appreciate it, that you embody that and bring that on and lead from that as well.
Christine.
Geez, what they both said was perfect and right off my script. I kind of lead by example on my team. I don't ask my team to do anything that I wouldn't do. And I'm right there with them in the weeds, helping them get through whatever we have to do.
Great. Anne Marie.
For me, being a good leader is sharing a lesson I was given when I started a certain job many years ago, which was to let them know that they are even more valuable when they disagree with me, and to encourage them to express as much as they wish to about ideas, and to not be afraid to speak up and disagree and have different viewpoints, because I think that creates a healthy group and, frankly, better decisions.
Thank you. Has your leadership style evolved over time. And for this, we'll start with Jennifer.
Yes. So as you, I guess, get older, right? Or would it seasoned? Is that the word we use? I like seasoned.
Yes.
Seasoned, yeah. As you get older, you see a lot of what to do. I think you see even more of what not to do. So I've taken that on board and really pay attention when I see something, and listen twice as much. And if I see something that maybe is not how I might lead or what I think that is the way forward, take that on board and really let that resonate. And you see some things along the way.
Okay, Linda,
Yeah,
has
so
your
I
style changed?
So I think it's evolved over the years from, like I mentioned earlier, like when you're younger in your career, or let's say less seasoned. I like that, Jen. That you do feel the need to let people know that you're strong and you're showing strength. And then as you get to, you ascend to other levels in your career, it's important to recognize that in some ways, when people need to come and work together with you, somehow they feel intimidated just because of your level or your status or your title. And that's not helpful to building a team. To Anne-Marie's point, what you need is their candor. You need their ideas to be brought forth. And so finding a way to put people at ease becomes paramount and front and center in the leadership style. And so that's for me how it has evolved over the years. There are still times when you do need to show that you're strong and you're logical and you're making good decisions. But a lot of it is about getting people to open up around you so that they can contribute to the team in a material way. Because as a good leader, that's what you really need.
Right. And Christine, has your leadership style changed over the years?
Definitely. I'm definitely listen more, and I'm way more collaborative because you can't know everything. And as you bring more people onto your team and people leave and people join you, they bring new skills and they do things a different way than you have. And it could be way better. So you open yourself up to all these great opportunities. When you act in a collaborative way. One of the things I'm personally working on lately is not responding right away. Sometimes things don't happen the way you want them, and you may draft a not so nice response, but I don't send them ever anymore. I walk away and I wait a few days and think about what else could have been involved in it. Now doing conversations and not email. Because a lot of times there's things that you just didn't realize were impacting the other person's decision-making that you wouldn't get via email, but you could get if you have a conversation. So that's become a critical part of what I'm doing, because working remote and not seeing each other every day, it's really hard to,
That's so true.
really hard to step away from the keyboard sometimes.
It's really true.
Elizabeth,
has
if
your
I might
leadership-
interject,
Yeah.
for some Q&A, I just don't want us to run out of time on that, if you don't mind, and then we'll get back to finish it up. We have a question from Anja Doe, and please excuse me if I didn't pronounce that correctly. She'd like to know how you juggle the demands of your leadership role and your advancement into the leadership position with family demands and commitments, especially if you have children, and I believe you all do. So does somebody who wants to, I see you shaking your head, Anne-Marie. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, my sons are grown now, but certainly all these years in my career, I was, working mom with kids in school and sports and all of that. And I learned to do the same thing at home that I do at business. What are the most important things? Where are my biggest priorities at both the office and at home? And to really zero in on those. Another one of my favorite expressions is perfect is the enemy of good enough. A lot of women love to be perfectionists. And I learned that despite the fact that I'd love everything to be perfect, what was really important was I getting the most important things done in both places and get comfortable with the fact that did not mean finishing everything on the list, because everything was not equally important. And it is a juggling act. But I learned that balance is the wrong word, because balance suggests equilibrium and perfection. And it was better to just say to myself, am I getting everything in harmony? It was better to approach harmony than perfect equilibrium. So that's what I do. It's you focus on what the most important things are at work and at home.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Christine, you mentioned being a single parent. How did you adjust and deal?
I worked a lot. I worked after the kids went to bed. And I had not a great husband when I had a husband and no husband when I was single, but I had a great nanny. She kept me sane.
Thank you. We have another question. I think we'll see if Linda and or Jennifer can take this one. What impact have climate change events like the massive floods we've had in the South and the fires raging in the West? What have they had on how you manage your portfolio and or your staff, depending on what events they are? Linda, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we had already been focusing on climate change as well as many clients, obviously, with especially with the change at the federal level administratively and our reentry into the Paris Agreement. And so a lot of clients, and as well as my firm, have been thinking about how do we really invest smart? Where do we need to focus our investments so that we can have the highest impact in the shortest amount of time so that we can really make a difference and an impact? But I do like the part of the question that sort of translates this climate change down to people and how it's impacted and changed people. And in our group, we have a very diverse mix of people generationally. And so as the Generation Z is coming into the workforce, it's been really fascinating to me to see how much they care about these causes. They care also a lot about their own well-being as well and what companies are doing to ensure their safety. But as it relates to climate change, they don't just care about it to the point that they ask about it. They care about it to the point that they are demanding that we do better as corporations and as companies. And they're doing the same thing as customers. They're controlling their purse strings in the same way. It's great, it's smart. And so because of that, it forces us to really be open and talk about these things, to talk about it before they even ask about it, because we know it's on their mind, and really demonstrate that it's not just words for us and it has meaning. And it goes even further than just climate change, even thinking more broadly about social responsibility and what we're doing in our companies and firms about equality and equity and other topics as well. And so we just have to be forthright, a little bit more transparent than we have been accustomed to being in years past when decisions were held at the top of a firm. We need for people to feel included in these thoughts and decisions and how we're making these investments. It's really important from a talent acquisition and retention perspective too. And so that's how it's really affected those things in our group.
Interesting, Linda. Thank you. Jen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I echo Linda's sentiments exactly. I mean, ESG is at the forefront of everyone's mind, not only companies,
Yes.
but also us on a personal level, right? Just today, if you're in the Northeast, right, the Northeastern, right, you think about, well, I have connectivity. Do I have a generator? How do I have diversity, across the spectrum just from a power and resiliency perspective? And then, DEI is so important as well. You could spend a whole conversation, Barbara,
Right.
on ESG.
Right.
And I echo exactly what Linda had said. I think it's paramount these days.
Yeah. And and I think it's just beginning. I think we're going to see a lot more in that area to come. So Anne Marie, since it's all about the aspiration, what would you do in commercial real estate if you couldn't fail? Or what would you do in life if you couldn't fail?
Speaking about CRE, when I look at the market today, and as you know, we track commercial real estate performance and the finance sector particularly, there are a lot of issues ahead for commercial real estate, a lot of issues about occupying buildings and how buildings will be occupied differently and likely not all as fully as they were before COVID. And what I find fascinating is I then look at the residential space and needs in this country that we have for underserved people who need better and more appropriate housing. If I couldn't fail, I would try to find a program, an initiative, an effort that could be started to try to connect the repurposing of commercial property in a way to fill the needs, the housing needs that we have in the United States. I'm not suggesting that's easy. I'm not suggesting it's inexpensive, but it is also costly for our country and our society to have underserved people in our country who need more housing and need better housing. And I'm fascinated by the space that's going to be available in one sector and the issues of space needed in another. So that's what I would do in CRE if I couldn't fail.
That's a very intriguing thought there you ended with, Anne Marie. Thank you for that. Elizabeth, did you, we've got some of our audience questions. Why don't you take it back?
Okay, so what do you see, and I would ask each one of you to answer from your particular field, what do you see as the trends for next year in commercial real estate? Let's start with Christine.
So from where I sit, the trends for property insurance in areas that are cat-driven exposures, like where there's earthquakes, wildfires, or floods, that market is continuing to harden and will get harder and harder to procure insurance at a reasonable rate. So landlords need to start saving a little bit more money or being willing to take on more risk in the form of deductibles or co-insurance or co-sharing in the future. In New York City, we are having a terrible time with labor law, predominantly, secondarily the sidewalk laws. And for building owners in New York, we're seeing just unprecedented rate hikes in the excess liability markets, and that is going to continue until something changes in Albany. And we're not seeing that in other states in the union. Other than that, hopefully everything else calms down, because we have been on a whirlwind for the last 36 months with rate hikes and inaccessibility to proper insurance for clients. So it's been very, very difficult.
Jennifer, what do you see for next year?
Sure. So from an occupier standpoint, Elizabeth, I think the health and safety of our workforce is paramount. So when we think of return to office, and what does that look like? Really, it's our people agenda, right? And entailing how people come back in, how do they feel safe, and make sure that that we're embracing this hybrid workforce, and people do vote with their feet, right? I think you want a guided hybrid work model, not just you choose what you want, because I think people, also appreciate some guardrails, but having the flexibility to hear what our staff and workforce have to say, but then also make sure that that we're all profitable. So I think that health and safety is paramount. RTO, 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 RTO. That's all I do.
Anne Marie, what do you see going forward for 2020?
Well, in our corporate meeting this morning on a report, an update that's centered on New York City as one example, continued concerns for the occupancy rates in the office and retail markets in New York. We think that even as RTO is implemented and companies bring back employees, we think that the impetus for many corporations will be to have hybrid work weeks, and also to not necessarily renew as fully the space they have when renewals come up. And of course, the pandemic exacerbated issues that were already in existence in the retail space. Having said that, there is a lot of capital. There are a lot of those willing to lend. And there's a lot of creativity in this sector. There are a lot of ideas that may be brought to bear. And I think we're going to start to witness some interesting repurposing of some buildings, and even some convergence where more office buildings, create their own WeWork models in there, where more hotels, incorporate co-working.
Right.
So I think we're going to see some more issues of occupancy, but I think we're also going to see some creative solutions and some capital to help it.
Thank you. And Linda, what do you foresee for next year?
Yeah, so since we heard Anne Marie and Jennifer covered corporate occupier pretty well. I'll take a broader approach to talk about in terms of sectors. Multifamily is been big, as well as industrial. The advent of online shopping, I think, will continue to see as a trend that rises and sort of outpaces sort of retail at a certain pace and level. And so those two sectors are huge and growing. And then net zero is still a big trend across all of the sectors. In terms of high tech and manufacturing sector, electric vehicles is just booming right now. And a lot of that work and production is actually happening stateside in the USA, not necessarily in New York, but across the USA. We're working with some great clients like Tesla and Lucid Motors and others, but even some older names that we're familiar with, Nissan and other companies like that, to really get electric vehicles, but also the infrastructure for that off the ground. And then finally, there's this huge infrastructure spending package that the Biden administration is getting pushed through. And I think that's going to be top of mind and front and center next year as you see that those dollars start to roll out. A lot of that, because of Senator Schumer, will come through New York and make a huge impact on kind of what we're seeing, what skills are needed, what type of labor is needed, how we sort of think about that through next year. And then finally, from a workforce perspective, we talked about climate change, but we also mentioned briefly about mental wellness and what companies are doing around that, especially like Jennifer talked about with return to office, the mental stress that that's going to put on our people. No doubt, we're still running a business, so we might need to get them back. But when we do, we still need to make sure that they're healthy mentally and we're taking care of them. So it's a big initiative really around mental wellness for our staffs and employees.
Great, thanks. And one final question for everyone. If I might,
Elizabeth, if I think we're coming up to time, so maybe one person could answer that final question.
Okay. So Anne Marie, what single piece of advice would you give to the next generation of women starting out in your field today?
I think that in addition to choosing something you love, because as I said, then you will excel, I think that it is very important to build a professional network. I think it's very important to get yourself out there, meet many people in your sector, even meet people outside of your sector, but build a network of professionals. You will find that you will go back to it many, many times and be as generous with that network as you can be. Always pay it forward, but you will find that it is the single critical way that you will stay abreast of your sector, stay abreast of opportunities, and create your own set of business people, men and women, that will guide your career and you will enjoy it while you do it.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Let's give a big hand to our amazing speakers for generously sharing their wisdom and insights today. Christine Chippernoy, Anne Marie DeCola, Linda Fogy, and Jennifer Stewart. As Crew New York members, you can connect with them through CrewBiz. Also, thanks to Elizabeth Schwero for so skillfully leading such a terrific discussion. Maria Elefante and Kenny Shepard for their leadership, and my co-host today. My apologies, I gather there was an issue with the link that was sent to registrants, and some of you had difficulty getting in if you got in at all. So I don't know what that was about. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, speakers, for sharing. Stay safe, be well, and please enjoy the upcoming holidays in person if you can.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.